Flash Bash, an opportunity to enjoy some wonderful stories. We are on a quest to find out who the winner is of this year's Edinburgh Award for Flash Fiction, which is open to writers worldwide, and the Golden Hare Award, which is a special prize given to the top story entered in the competition by a writer living in Scotland.
Tonight we have 6 stories to present and enjoy. We've got 309 by Laura Muellerfelt, I Love You by Meg Mcleod, A Story on a Postcard by Peter Watson, Souvenirs by Mary Edward, The Concert by Anne Seed, and Empty by Toria Winters. Laura, Meg, Peter, Anne and Toria are with us. Unfortunately, Mary was unable to make it.
So welcome everyone.
Hi.
Congratulations on getting into the Flash Bash. And by the time your stories get to this stage of the competition, they have been read and reviewed over 40 times. So they have really gone through the mill to get to this stage. So really, congratulations. Linda leads the organization of all the readers. There are some pretty fierce arguments, aren't there, Linda?
I would say yes, and not quite fisticuffs, but opinionated enough to have some of the readers actually apologize to each other the next day.
And it means every story that's got through has got someone behind it who really championed it. Often groups of people who are really pushing for those stories to go through. So congratulations, and hope you enjoy today.
At the end of the show, our judges, the award-winning authors Zoe Strachan and Louise Welsh, will tell us which story they've chosen to advance to the final. Now remember that while we're going to hear some wonderful readings of the stories, the judge's decision is entirely based on the written word, not on any of the performances.
We'll begin with Laura Muellerfelt. Laura's a writer from Glasgow. Her work has been published in several journals and short story collections. After completing an MLit in creative writing at the University of Glasgow, she worked as an English teacher for 7 years. She's now in her second year of a PhD in creative writing at the University of St Andrews.
So there's 2 parts to the creative writing PhD at St Andrews. For the academic part, I'm looking at the theme of memory in the writing of Ali Smith. I've been looking into that from a more scientific point of view, so specifically involuntary memories, which is when a memory pops into your head without you deliberately trying to recall it. Where I live in Glasgow, I'm quite near the River Kelvin, and I often walk along there up towards Mary Hill. And at one point the path breaks away from the river and you have to cross the road, and there's railings there, and I once saw a football top tied there, and it made me think about not only the child that had lost their life, but the people or persons left behind. But obviously that fits into my writing because I'm looking at the theme of memory, and this seemed to me very much an act of remembrance. You can watch your feet like you're in a film, like it's not you walking. You just see the shoe go up, hit the ground. She was out of breath, walking too fast. She looked at her watch. 3 exactly. Is that you gonna buy your Ryan a present, Hen? Another mum asked. A pause, a beat too long. Aye. The shop was up by the school, and the kids were streaming out and yelling. She wished she could have come at another time, but it had to be now. The door jingled as she entered. Ah, there you are. Thought you'd be wanting this, Mary said, holding up a football top, just the right size for the age he was now. The sight of it, bigger than the one from last year, made her fumble her purse. But Mary was already folding the top and gently sliding it into a bag. Now you put that away. 3:06. She had to hurry. Her eyes went down again, watching her feet go up, hit the ground, up, hit the ground. Then she stopped. She was here. She looked at her watch, heart beating. 3:08, a minute early. She stood by the railing and waited. The sound of a car getting nearer. 3:09. The car passed, slowing down for the speed bumps that were put in. She turned around, carefully took the top out of the bag and fixed it to the railing. Then there was quiet.
Oh,
Thank you.
very, it's lovely, beautiful.
Extraordinary.
it reappears as well, sorry, the football top every year. So
yeah. What's interesting is the comment in the story that it's the size that he would have been now. So it's not, the memory isn't held, it's she's moving on with each year, you know, that he would have been a little bit bigger and taller and whatever. No, it's beautiful.
I am so pleased to introduce Meg Mcleod. Meg grew up in the industrial Midlands of England, and after a few years in America and Canada, she moved to Scotland. Among other achievements, she's published a book of poems called Raven Songs. Meg lives in the far north of Scotland, overlooking the Pentland Firth and the Orkney Islands.
The sea underpins everything, every hour of the day. It is very beautiful, very dramatic, very powerful, and also very contemplative. I spend a long time just looking at the sea, and that's where a lot of my poetry comes from. Well, a lot of my writing is about various aspects of love, you know, the complications of it and the beauty of it, and sometimes the horror of it. There was no story when I started writing this story. It was just the first sentence, he stood in the dock. And then I just let things grow. Like when you do a painting, you put a color down, and then the next color will present itself. The next word came. And by the time I got to the fourth sentence, she was shocked. That set the focus for the story. And after that, I followed the crumbs through the forest. He stood in the dock, guilty, unanimous. He was shocked, not at the verdict, but at herself. He had loved him for 15 years, loved his quiet attentiveness, his attention to detail. It was the detail that trapped him, neatly tied with the same twine he used to stake the peas. The 5 little packages in the potting shed were a gift to the detectives. Shades of blonde hair, clippings, his precious mementos. All the time in court, he had looked straight ahead. Only when he was taken down did he glance at her. He mouthed the words, "I love you." The years unraveled backwards to the beginning. He said he liked brunettes. Was this the reason she was still alive? Were all her years with him balanced on a precipice? How long would it take her to understand? She stopped her thoughts, hands shaking now. She made coffee and watched the news reporting the court case. Friends had stepped away. She couldn't blame them. Detectives had searched the house. There was nothing untouched. There was nothing decent left. Nothing left of their sacred vows. She went to the glass-screened visitor's room with one question: why? He cried like the child they never had. I don't know. She burnt their bed and his possessions. She kept the silver locket with a picture of his mother, a pretty, blonde woman with eyes as cold as ice. It was, she thought, inside this locket that she would find the answer.
Oh,
It does, it gives you the chills, doesn't it?
There's always some family member behind some monster like that. There's always someone there who gets, well, blindsided by it, but yeah, very powerful, very good.
very good. We come to a story written by Peter Watson. Scottish-born Peter began writing seriously after he took an early retirement, and he draws his inspiration from 29 years spent working in America, his business travels all over the world, and the wild Scottish landscape where he spends time and writes. He says he prefers offbeat subjects.
It's actually biographical. My dad used to take us up to Scotland on holiday. My mother came from Montrose, so we had family up there, and we would go up to Scotland every year. We drive up, drive all over the place, and then all of a sudden he he lost the urge to do that and became quite stubborn and insisted on staying at home all the time. So Mum couldn't leave him. So she basically gave him his breakfast, set him up with something to do for the day, and then went out. They lived in Skegness at that time, which is a small seaside town in Lincolnshire. And so she would go around and have her holiday. All the things that she would have done on a holiday in Montrose, she did in Skegness.
Dad wouldn't go away on holiday, so Mum took her holidays by herself in the small seaside town where she lived. Each morning she left him at home and went out on little excursions. She took long walks on the beach. She lunched in nice restaurants. She went to the cinema. She sent postcards to family and friends. When Dad died, she gave up taking her holiday at home. She went to Paris.
Lovely.
Yeah, good for her. Yeah.
Absolutely short and sweet.
Small but perfectly formed.
Yeah, exactly.
Our next story is Souvenirs by Mary Edward, who was unable to join us. A former teacher, Mary has been a writer for more than 30 years and has published many short stories and several novels. She's won a number of competitions and is a past president of the Scottish Association of Writers.
Our English grandmother raised us. We never knew our parents, only photographs. Grandmother saved us when they died and brought us from Hong Kong, her darling babies. Now she is dead too, and as we are closing up her house we come across the button box. As children we were always fascinated by these treasures, cut from some amazing garments of grandmother's exciting past, and clothes which belonged to our parents. Everyone had a story, from the jewelled buttons of grandfather's smoking jacket or dad's pilot uniform, to the little satin buttons of our mother's wedding dress. We were enchanted, Melanie and I. Grandmother would sit with us, the buttons scattered on the kitchen table, and tell us magical tales of these events these buttons had once known. What delightful souvenirs, Melanie says now, as we pour the buttons out. Then we see, folded on the bottom of the box and quite yellowed by time, a small newspaper cutting. From the South China Times, dated 3rd July, 1997. I unfold it as Melanie looks on. Couple take twins to England. The newborn girl twins, found abandoned in an alleyway downtown a month ago, have joined the British exodus as the Union Jack is lowered in Hong Kong for the last time. Diplomat Marcus St. John Wells and his wife, who are childless, leave today with the famous babies to be brought up in England. My sister and I turn to each other. We have no words.
Lovely story.
I have such a strong memory of pouring out all the buttons out of my mum's tin.
I've still got the button box. But
I do. I've got two. Anne Seed is the author of our next story, The Concert. Anne wrote a poem about the moon when she was 10 and has never stopped. She found plenty of inspiration in her many travels and says her imagination is always kept alive by the four wee rascals who call her Granny. She began entering writing competitions after her retirement and has had some success with short stories and a memoir. She only discovered flash fiction fairly recently.
I'm sure, like everybody, when you're out and about, you often pass homeless people or people begging on the street. And I'm always struck, especially over the last few years, how many of them seem to be quite young. You do see some of them with a musical instrument, or maybe they're singing. And you always just wonder, well, what brought them to that? I think what really prompted it was the wasted potential and the wasted talent. Obviously, something went wrong. Yeah. And they never quite got the chance or the opportunity that other people might have. It was just a story that sort of grew from that.
His paper cup
now weighted with my £2 coins, sat more comfortably on the dog-peed cobbles. "How you doing?" I asked. "Would you like a song?" he replied. He reached for his guitar, propped weathered and worn against the wall. His assuredness was at odds with his eyes. They were pale, floating in alcohol, drugs, maybe both. They spoke of lostness, abandonment, when hardship had drowned him. But he smiled. His guitar was perfectly in tune, like his voice. He sang softly, living the music dug deep where the poison couldn't reach. Did he once have lessons? A warm bed? Kisses goodnight? He looked right at me, weaving with his words a world we shared for passing minutes, immune from the brokenness. The lane had long settled, like an old man deep in his armchair, happy to let the world drift by. But he was young, ages with my son, sitting ragged on weeds. Handsomeness still lay on his face. Untangle the hair, feed him square meals. He could be striding to a theatre, reaping applause, a living for his talent. I clapped, held his eyes, yearned for him to belong, to have a mother. I gave him a £5 note, small price for a concert, begged him to buy a coffee, a sandwich. I walked away in the sun-setting evening, turned, waved. He smiled, leant back against the wall. Please, please, let him be loved by someone, somewhere, someone who misses him.
Yeah.
Very, very poignant. Very. You almost see the boy
Absolutely.
just sitting there.
Our final story of this heat comes from Toria Winters. Toria is a midwife, an actor, a knitwear designer, and has enjoyed writing since childhood. She's had a play performed at a new writing scratch night run by Blazing Hyena Theatre Company.
It's a hugely rewarding job, very difficult at times, but it's such a privilege to be part of people's lives when they're becoming parents. Lovely job to have. Things that I've experienced at work have definitely come into the story. It's obviously not based on any one particular person or situation, but there was more a voice that came to me. I was going for a walk when my baby was quite small and she was in a sling cuddled up to me, and it was just a voice of the character that came to me, and there was something about holding my child and thinking about how it would feel to lose a child and possibly never to have the chance to be a parent. It kind of, as Meg was saying before, there were a few words that started it and then it all sort of spilled out.
The beetroot bruises under her skin reveal the violence of their attempts to save her. Her hand lies in mine, floppy and translucent like a dead jellyfish. I watch as her chest is forced up and down, over and over by the harsh plastic tubing down her throat. This is not what I had imagined when that embryo implanted. I saw a future where we planted wildflowers together, where I placed my hands over hers and taught her the intricacies of knitting and crochet. Now those same hands shield one so small that a single finger dwarfs her entire leg. Bitter tears sting and blur my eyes. My fucking womb couldn't do the one thing it was meant to do. I took the vitamins, I injected myself with the hormones. All it had to do was provide a safe haven. Another woman left yesterday. Baby attached to oxygen tank, car seat brandished by her partner like a trophy. Belle lies still in her plastic tank, limbs cradled by a rolled-up towel. Forever denied the chance to graduate. I watch numbly as each life-saving line slides out, and her tiny eyelids flutter closed. I snip a strand of the soft down from her head and press her inky feet against a card to remember their shape. One last kiss on her forehead, and that's it. I leave with my paperwork, the bold facts. Extreme prematurity, abruption, hysterectomy. I am hollow. Just the scent of her sweet breath in my memories.
Yeah.
There's nothing really to say, is there, when you hear something like that?
Just about holding it together here.
Yeah. We've heard all 6 stories and experienced some really marvellous readings in this heat of the flash bash. Sarah met with the judges earlier to find out which story they've chosen to go forward to the final.
Zoe and Louise, those are the stories from episode 3. We had Story on a Postcard, which at 72 words is probably postcard length. We had a glimpse of lost youth in the concert. We had the horrific revelations of I Love You. International adoption in Souvenirs. We had the tragic but pacey tale of 309 and the incredible emotional drive behind Empty. What did you think?
The level of complexity that people manage to fit into such a short word count is hugely impressive. You know, these are complex stories and complex worlds and complex realizations. And as you said, twists in the tale and just really short word counts. I think it's hugely impressive and also hugely disciplined. And often we think of creativity as coming from here, you know, just this impulse, this creative inspiration. But anything successful, I think, is always married to creative discipline. And the word count, the word limit on the flash fiction really points that up. You know, these writers have worked really hard and they've come up with something complex, satisfying, moving, in some cases shocking, and surprising, you know, in terms of plot.
Yeah, nice to see, you were pleased to see a crime one in there with that.
A chilling realization, actually, and I Love You.
Yeah.
And something that people, I think, when you read headlines, you ask yourself these questions, don't you? You know, what is it like for the person behind the headline, for the relative that, you know, in this case, a spouse, but it's exploring territory that we wonder about.
Definitely. And the concert are really, I like these stories that look very closely at one moment in life. And I think flash fiction lends itself to that. With Story on a Postcard felt close to poetry to me. I felt that I was maybe looking for more fictional evocation. I thought it was so impressive to do it in so few words, but maybe reading more as a poem, I think, when I was reading it. Souvenirs I was very fond of, and conversely Souvenirs, I felt it was such a big story. I felt it could have done with more words. You know, I'd love to read a longer story about that situation. As it was, it felt as though it was truncated too soon, and I was you know, I really wanted to be in the world, actually. I was really enjoying it, and I wanted to know more, and for the history and the backdrop and the relationships all to have space to, you know, to unfold. So yeah, I'd be very pleased if someone expanded that one.
As a writer, I do think it's not a bad thing when someone says, I liked that, but I want more. You know, I think that's the best direction you can get sometimes. This is something else, you know. And it's interesting when you say, is this poetry? Is this a longer short story? What is this? And sometimes we try out our voices and our stories in different forms. So I think you're right, to have a longer souvenir would be good.
Yeah. And then Empty, which we haven't mentioned, I think it was the first one that had that real visceral emotional punch to it. When I read Empty, I was really moved by it, and I thought the descriptions were beautiful, again, beautiful and disturbing. And yeah, I mean, it just again took me into the moment, and the harshness too. You know, this is one that's, you know, it has anger, grief and anger go together so, you know, so strongly, and this really captured that, I thought. And it's something that people don't talk about too much, you know, or I think don't describe so often. And yeah, I thought it was really well done.
I think Empty is a story that will speak to a lot of readers.
Yeah. And then 309, it's the death of a child, and another very moving one.
There was a great deal of tension in 309. You know, and it was interesting to me that this writer had the control to evoke emotion, tension, and feeling of time, you know, in such a short piece.
Yeah, that repetition that you know, we don't understand the title when we start reading, and then it becomes clear. Oh gosh, it's difficult, isn't it? You know, I've got them in front of me because I've got Empty here, in that lovely moment. You know, I saw a future where we planted wildflowers together. It's just, 309 does have, you know, it does have that lovely sense of community and people gathering round and commemorating, and it's got the dialogue, and the ending is so restrained, isn't it? I really admire that there's, you know, there was a chance to make that a big twist in the tale, but it's so finely observed.
And I think with both of these short flash fictions, they're dealing with difficult subject matter, and the tone, I think, in both of them is perfect. And I think tone is something that we often struggle with as writers. How do you get not only the voice, the events, the plot, the structure, but tone, I think. And I don't mean that tone has to be nice. I don't mean that at all, but it just has to be somehow true. And I think both of these stories have, the tone is true. We have made a decision, and I think it's kind of cruel of you to make us decide. It is, isn't it? Because we're not comparing like with like in a way. And so we have come down, we just had to make a decision. And so we have decided that to go for 309.
Yay.
Oh.
Hey!
Done.
Well done.
Well done.
Well done.
So, Laura.
Yeah, I'm totally speechless. I wasn't expecting that. The other stories were so brilliant. Thank you.
When your first email came in, I did sort of find it quite daunting, but having just sort of taken it step by step, it's actually been really exciting. And I'm just very delighted that I was part of it. Yeah.
Yes, it's been a privilege to be part of it. And the stories are absolutely wonderful.
Oh,
yes.
I think it's such a worthy winner. Well done.
I felt the same as Anne, like terrified, to be honest, when I got that email, the idea of reading my story out, but I really, really enjoyed the process as well. So I thank you, I guess, for the opportunity and for making, you know, this into a fun event, despite everything else that's going on.
I'd just like to say that it's the first competition, I've only entered 2, that I've actually made the shortlist. So I was chuffed as heck just to make it that far. Some of the stories are just absolutely stunning. And I am happy to be a shortlister, and I wish the other people going through to the final the best of luck.
Fantastic to be part of. Really, really enjoyed it. It's given me something to keep myself going. And it's just, it's a very, very worthy win. I read your story, Laura, and got a proper kick in the heart. It was fantastic.
Well,
really, really loved it.
I'm still recovering from yours. I'm actually I'm crying.
Stories by all of the writers you've heard tonight will be published in our next anthology. For the next few weeks, you'll also be able to read the stories on our website. We will be back tomorrow with the final heat of Flash Bash 2021, and we hope you'll join us then. Bye for now.
Bye, everybody.